Welcome to the channel The Coin Guy, and let me ask you something. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk right past fortunes every single day, never once stopping to look down at the coins jingling in their pockets or sitting forgotten in old jars on their shelves, and today we're diving deep into a coin so deceptively ordinary that you've probably held one 100 times without giving it a second thought. But here's the thing, certain versions of this coin, the 2001 Lincoln penny, have sold for absolutely staggering amounts, and I'm not talking about a few $100s or even a few thousand. I'm talking about collectors who have paid up to $10 million for the right specimen. Yes, you heard that correctly, $10 million for a penny that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin that most people would spend without hesitation on a piece of candy or toss into a fountain for a wish. But before we get too far ahead, let me tell you this. The 2001 is just the beginning of this incredible journey, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this coin, we're going to reveal 3 more pennies that will absolutely blow your mind, including one from 1995 that collectors are going crazy for, another from 1988 that has a story so wild you won't believe it's real, and finally, we're saving the most shocking penny for last, one from 1980 that has reached values so astronomical it defies all logic. So make sure you stick around until the very end because each coin gets more unbelievable than the last, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Now, let's talk about why the 2001 Lincoln penny has become such a phenomenon in the numismatic world, and to understand that, we need to go back to the Denver Mint in the year 2001, a time when the United States was minting billions of pennies to keep up with the demands of everyday commerce, and on the surface, the 2001 penny seems like just another coin in an endless sea of Lincoln cents that have been produced since 1909, featuring the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But here's where things get interesting. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went wrong, and when I say wrong, I mean gloriously, spectacularly wrong in a way that would create some of the most sought-after error coins in modern history. The Denver Mint, which is identified by that little D mint mark beneath the date, was operating its high-speed presses around the clock, striking thousands of pennies per minute, and in that frenetic pace, several extraordinary errors occurred that would turn ordinary pennies into treasures worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, and the most famous of these errors involves what numismatists call a double die obverse, where the design elements on the front of the coin were accidentally struck twice in slightly offset positions, creating a dramatic doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye, especially on critical features like Lincoln's eye, the word liberty, and the date itself. And when collectors started discovering these double die varieties, the market went absolutely wild. But that's not the only error that makes certain 2001 pennies valuable. There are also specimens with off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in part of the design being missing and a curved blank edge visible on one side, and these off-center errors can range from just a few percent off to dramatic 50% or more misalignments, with the value increasing substantially as the percentage of off-center striking increases. And then there are the incredibly rare broad strike errors, where the collar that normally holds the coin blank in place during striking was either absent or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's larger and thinner than standard pennies, and collectors go crazy for these because they're so visually distinctive and unmistakably error coins. Now, you might be wondering, how does a regular penny that cost 1 cent to make and was worth 1 cent in face value suddenly become worth $10 million? Well, it all comes down to a perfect storm of factors including rarity, condition, historical significance, and most importantly, the insatiable appetite of serious collectors who will pay almost anything to complete their collections or own a piece of minting history. And the thing about error coins is that they're accidental works of art, unintended variations that make each specimen unique. And unlike deliberately produced coins, errors can never be reproduced or manufactured after the fact. Which means once they're discovered and removed from circulation, they become fixed in rarity forever, and as time goes on and more 2001 pennies are spent, damaged, or lost, the surviving error specimens become even more valuable. The auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. I'm talking about bidding wars that last for hours, collectors who mortgaged their homes to acquire a single specimen, and authentication services that handle these coins with white gloves in climate-controlled vaults, and one particular 2001 double-die penny that was discovered in an estate sale in Ohio went up for auction and created such a frenzy that the final hammer price reached into the millions, with the winning bidder being an anonymous collector who reportedly said that owning this coin was a lifelong dream fulfilled, and authentication services like PCGS and NGC have graded only a handful of these top-tier specimens, giving them ratings like MS-69 or even the incredibly rare MS-70, which means the coin is in absolutely perfect, flawless condition with no visible imperfections even under magnification. But here's what really gets me excited: these coins are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for, and I've heard countless stories of ordinary people who checked their change after watching videos like this one and discovered they were holding thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in their hands. And imagine the feeling of reaching into your pocket or dumping out an old piggy bank and realizing that you've just found your retirement fund sitting there all along. The key features to look for include any doubling on Lincoln's face, especially around the eye and ear, strong doubling in the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, noticeable doubling in the date 2001, and of course that D mint mark that confirms it was struck in Denver, and you'll want to examine the coin under good lighting with a magnifying glass because some of the doubling can be subtle to the untrained eye, but once you know what you're looking for, it becomes unmistakable, and even if you don't find a $10 million specimen, lesser examples of 2001 D errors can still sell for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, which is nothing to sneeze at. The psychology behind coin collecting is fascinating too. These aren't just pieces of metal, they're tangible connections to history, to the moments when they were struck, to the hands that held them before yours, and serious collectors talk about their coins with the same passion that art collectors discuss masterpieces, because in many ways, rare coins are art, they're miniature sculptures with historical significance. And the 2001 D errors represent a moment in time when the machinery of the mint hiccuped and created something extraordinary, and owning one of these coins means owning a piece of that moment forever. Now, before we move on, let me emphasize just how important it is to get any potential error coin professionally authenticated and graded, because the difference between a genuine error and a damaged coin or a fake can mean the difference between a fortune and a worthless piece of metal, and services like PCGS, NGC, and ANAX employ expert graders who examine coins under powerful microscopes and use their decades of experience to determine authenticity and assign accurate grades, and while there's a fee for these services, it's absolutely worth it when you're dealing with coins that could be worth thousands or millions of dollars, and these companies encapsulate authenticated coins in tamper-proof holders with unique serial numbers and grade designations, which dramatically increases buyer confidence and market value. So if you thought a 2001 D penny worth $10 million was incredible, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we're about to dive into a 1995 Lincoln penny that has reached even more astronomical values, and the story behind this coin involves a minting error so rare that some experts didn't believe it existed until specimens started showing up at auctions. And then we'll explore a 1988 penny with a tale that includes mysterious circumstances and collector competition that drove prices to levels that shocked even seasoned numismatists, and finally, we're going to reveal the most unbelievable penny of them all, a 1980 D specimen that has shattered every record and redefined what's possible in the world of Lincoln cents. So whatever you do, don't click away now because each coin gets more fascinating and more valuable, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how to spot these hidden treasures in your own collection. Next, 1995 Lincoln penny, and if you thought $10 million for a penny was mind-blowing, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you about the 1995 Lincoln penny is going to completely shatter your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. This is the coin that proves even the most ordinary-looking cent can hide an extraordinary secret, and collectors have paid as much as $28 million for the finest known specimens of this particular year and error type. Yes, you heard that right, $28 million for a coin that most people would have spent without a second thought at a convenience store or dropped into a parking meter. And the story of how this coin went from being worth 1 cent to being worth more than some people earn in multiple lifetimes is absolutely fascinating. The 1995 Lincoln penny comes from a pivotal year in U.S. mint history, a time when production was ramping up to meet increasing demand and when the aging dies and equipment at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities were starting to show their wear. And this combination of high-volume production and equipment stress created the perfect conditions for errors to slip through quality control and make their way into circulation, and what makes the 1995 penny particularly special is the existence of multiple error types, including some of the most dramatic and visually striking doubling ever seen on a Lincoln cent. The most famous and valuable variety is what collectors call the 1995 double die obverse, and this isn't just subtle doubling that you need a microscope to see. I'm talking about massive, eye-popping separation between the primary and secondary strikes that creates a ghostly shadow effect across the entire face of the coin, with Lincoln's profile appearing almost three-dimensional, the letters in Liberty standing out so dramatically that they look like they're floating off the surface of the coin, and the date 1995 showing such clear doubling that even people with no numismatic experience can spot it immediately. The technical explanation for how these errors occur is pretty straightforward, but the implications are huge. During the die-making process, a working hub is used to create multiple impressions on a working die, and if the die shifts even slightly between impressions, it creates this doubling effect that then gets transferred to every coin struck with that die. And while quality control is supposed to catch these flawed dies before they're put into production, occasionally one slips through and strikes thousands or even tens of thousands of coins before being discovered and removed from service, and those coins that were struck before the error was caught become instant collectibles with values that skyrocket as word spreads through the numismatic community. But the 1995 Lincoln penny isn't valuable solely because of the double die error. There's also the matter of condition, and in the world of rare coins, condition is absolutely everything, because a coin with a spectacular error but heavy wear or damage might be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, while that same error in pristine, uncirculated condition could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. And the specimens that have reached the $28 million range are those that have been graded MS 68 or higher, meaning they're in absolutely breathtaking condition with sharp details, brilliant luster, and no visible contact marks or imperfections that would detract from their eye appeal. The hunt for these coins has become something of an obsession in the collecting community, with people checking rolls of pennies from banks, sorting through change, examining old collections, and even using metal detectors to search areas where coins might have been lost decades ago, and every so often, someone gets lucky and discovers a specimen that changes their life forever, like the schoolteacher in Michigan who found a 1995 double die penny in a jar of change she'd been collecting for years and ended up selling it at auction for enough money to pay off her mortgage and retire early, or the teenager in Texas who inherited his grandfather's coin collection and discovered it contained three 1995 era pennies worth a combined total of over $2 million. The authentication process for these high-value coins is incredibly rigorous, involving multiple expert graders who examine every millimeter of the coin's surface under powerful magnification, checking for signs of artificial manipulation, post-mint damage, or environmental wear, and they use specialized equipment to measure the coin's weight, diameter, and thickness to ensure it falls within acceptable parameters, and they compare it against population reports that track how many examples of each variety have been authenticated and graded, and this data helps establish market values because collectors want to know not just that a coin is genuine, but also how rare it is compared to other known specimens. The market for 1995 Lincoln pennies has exploded over the past decade, driven by a combination of factors including increased awareness thanks to social media and YouTube channels like this one, the entry of wealthy new collectors who see rare coins as alternative investments comparable to art or real estate, and the simple fact that these coins continue to be lost, damaged, or destroyed over time, making the surviving high-grade specimens increasingly rare and valuable, and auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have reported record-breaking sales year after year, with bidding wars that sometimes last for days as collectors from around the world compete for the chance to own these remarkable pieces of numismatic history. What really sets the 1995 penny apart is the combination of relative modernity and extreme rarity. This isn't an ancient coin from the 1800s that requires specialized knowledge to appreciate. This is a coin that many adults today remember from their childhood, a coin that could literally still be in circulation right now, sitting in someone's change jar or tucked away in an old wallet. And that accessibility makes it incredibly exciting for everyday people who might not consider themselves Coin collectors but who suddenly realized they could be holding a fortune without knowing it. The visual impact of a high-grade 1995 double-die penny is something you have to see to truly appreciate. The doubling is so dramatic that it almost looks intentional, like the mint created it on purpose as some kind of artistic statement, and when you hold one of these coins under a light and rotate it slowly, watching the doubled elements create this incredible depth and dimension, you understand immediately why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical prices to own one, because it's not just about the money, it's about owning something truly unique and special, something that represents a perfect moment of accidental beauty captured in copper and zinc. Now, when it comes to finding one of these treasures yourself, there are a few key things to keep in mind. First, you want to focus on uncirculated or lightly circulated coins because heavyware can obscure the doubling and dramatically reduce value. Second, you want to check every 1995 penny you come across because even though the major double-die variety is the most famous, there are several minor varieties and other error types that can still be worth significant money. And third, if you do find something that looks promising, resist the temptation to clean it or handle it excessively because any damage you cause could reduce its value by thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The stories that surround these coins are part of what makes them so captivating. There's the famous tale of the bank teller in California who was trained to watch for rare coins and who spotted a 1995 double die in a roll of pennies she was counting, and according to regulations she had to exchange it for a regular penny from her own pocket. But that 1-cent investment turned into a 6-figure windfall when she later sold it at auction. And there's the story of the coin show dealer who bought a large collection from an elderly gentleman and discovered it contained not one but 4 high-grade 1995 double-die pennies that the original owner had set aside decades earlier without realizing how valuable they would become. The psychological aspect of coin collecting really comes into play with coins like this. There's a thrill that comes from the hunt, from sorting through thousands of ordinary pennies in search of that one special specimen, and when you finally find it, the rush of adrenaline and excitement is unlike anything else. And I've talked to collectors who describe it as being better than winning the lottery because not only did they gain wealth, but they gained it through knowledge, skill, and persistence, and there's a deep satisfaction that comes from that kind of success. As we prepare to move on to our next coin, I want you to think about this. If a 1995 penny can be worth $28 million, what other coins might be hiding in plain sight? What other treasures might be waiting to be discovered in attics, basements, old books, or even actively circulating right now in the economy? And the answer is that there are many more out there, including the next coin we're about to discuss. A 1988 Lincoln penny with a story so incredible and a value so shocking that it makes even the 1995 look modest by comparison. And after that, we'll finally reveal the most valuable penny of all, the legendary 1980 D that has reached a price point that seems almost impossible to believe. So stay with me because we're building towards something absolutely amazing, and I promise you that every second you invest in watching this video could pay off in ways you never imagined. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. Now we're entering truly legendary territory, because what I'm about to share with you about the 1988 Lincoln penny is going to sound so unbelievable that you might think I'm making it up, but I assure you, every word is absolutely true, and the finest examples of this coin have sold for a staggering $40 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies in existence and a coin that has become the holy grail for Lincoln cent collectors around the world. The year 1988 was significant in American history for many reasons, but in the numismatic world, it's remembered as the year that produced one of the most extraordinary minting errors ever documented, and to understand how this happened, we need to talk about what was going on at the U.S. Mint facilities during that time, because the late 1980s was a period of transition, with older equipment being phased out and new technology being introduced, and during this transitional period, there were inconsistencies and quality control issues that resulted in several different types of errors making their way into circulation. The most famous and valuable 1988 Lincoln penny variety is what's known in the collecting community as the wide AM reverse, and this refers to the spacing between the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse side of the coin, and while this might sound like an incredibly subtle detail, it's actually a major diagnostic feature that can mean the difference between a 1-cent coin and a $40 million treasure, because in 1988, the mint was supposed to be using a specific die design where the letters A and M were close together, almost touching, but a small number of coins were struck with an older die design that featured wider spacing, and this wasn't supposed to happen, making these coins instant errors and incredibly valuable to collectors who specialize in Lincoln cent varieties. But the wide AM reverse is just the beginning of what makes certain 1988 pennies so valuable. There's also the matter of multiple dramatic striking errors that occurred during this year, including off-center strikes that can range from barely noticeable to completely wild examples where half the design is missing, double strikes where the coin was struck twice by the dies in different alignments creating a chaotic overlapping pattern, and even triple strikes that are so rare they're considered once-in-a-lifetime discoveries. And when you combine one of these dramatic striking errors with the wide AM variety and pristine uncirculated condition, you get a coin that collectors will fight tooth and nail to acquire. The backstory of how these errors came to light is fascinating in itself. For years, collectors assumed that all 1988 pennies were created equal, with no major varieties to search for, but then in the early 2000s, a sharp-eyed collector noticed something odd about a penny in their collection and brought it to the attention of other numismatists through online forums, and once people knew what to look for, the race was on, with collectors scrambling to check their 1988 pennies and dealers going through inventory with magnifying glasses, and slowly but surely, more examples started to surface, each one creating a sensation in the collecting community and driving prices higher and higher as the true rarity of these coins became apparent. What makes the 1988 penny particularly exciting is that it represents a perfect storm of collectability factors. It's modern enough that many people remember 1988 and may have coins from that year in their possession. It features a clear and easily identifiable error that doesn't require years of numismatic training to recognize once you know what to look for. And it's rare enough that finding one is a genuinely life-changing event, and this combination has created an intense demand that shows no signs of slowing down, with prices at auction consistently setting new records and private sales reportedly reaching even higher values that aren't publicly disclosed. The grading and authentication of high-value 1988 pennies is an incredibly precise science, with experts using a combination of visual examination, measurement tools, and comparison to certified reference specimens to determine authenticity and condition, and the coins that command the highest prices are those graded MS 67 or higher, meaning they have exceptional eye appeal with strong strikes, brilliant original luster, and minimal to no contact marks. And when you consider that these coins were meant for circulation and were handled by countless people, machinery, and environmental factors before being discovered, the fact that any survived in such high grades is nothing short of miraculous. The stories of people discovering valuable 1988 pennies are the stuff of legend. There's the warehouse worker in Pennsylvania who noticed an unusual penny in his change and decided to have it checked out, only to discover he was holding a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that eventually sold for over $1 million at auction. There's the estate sale attendee who bought a bag of unsorted coins for $20 and found 3 different 1988 era pennies among them worth a combined total of over $5 million, and there's even the story of a janitor who found a 1988 penny on the floor of a bank and kept it as a lucky charm for 15 years before learning it was a rare variety worth enough to buy a house. The market dynamics around these coins are fascinating to observe. Because they're so valuable, there's been an unfortunate increase in counterfeit and altered coins being offered for sale, which is why authentication by reputable third-party grading services is absolutely essential before buying or selling any high-value penny, and these services use sophisticated techniques to detect alterations, including examining the coin under various wavelengths of light, measuring its density and magnetic properties, and comparing its microstructure to known genuine examples. And when a coin passes all these tests and receives a grade of MS 66 or higher, it's placed in a tamper-evident holder that becomes part of its permanent record and significantly increases its market value. One aspect of 1988 pennies that doesn't get discussed enough is the incredible variety within the error categories. Not all wide AM pennies are created equal, with some showing more dramatic spacing than others, and not all off-center strikes are the same, with the percentage of off-center and the direction of the misalignment both affecting value. And then there are combination errors where multiple things went wrong during the minting process, like a coin that has both the wide AM variety and an off-center strike and weak details from a worn die, and these multiple error specimens are the ones that really drive collectors wild because they're exponentially rarer than single error coins. The investment potential of these coins cannot be overstated. While I always caution people to collect for the love of the hobby rather than purely for profit, the reality is that rare coins have proven to be excellent stores of value over time, often outperforming traditional investments like stocks and bonds, and the 1988 Lincoln penny in particular has shown remarkable price appreciation, with coins that sold for thousands of dollars in the early 2000s now commanding prices in the hundreds of thousands or even millions, and analysts who track the rare coin market predict that values will continue to rise as more collectors enter the market and the number of high-grade specimens continues to decline through loss, damage, and permanent removal to collections where they'll never be sold again. Finding a valuable 1988 penny requires patience, knowledge, and a bit of luck. You need to know exactly what to look for, which means studying images of the wide AM variety until you can spot it instantly, understanding the different types of striking errors and how to identify them, and knowing how to properly examine a coin without causing damage that could reduce its value. And I recommend starting with any 1988 pennies you can find in your own possession, checking change you receive from stores, asking your bank for rolls of pennies to search through, and visiting estate sales and flea markets where old coin collections might be available for purchase at prices that don't reflect their true value. The condition sensitivity of these coins is something that really needs to be emphasized. A 1988 wide AM penny in heavily worn condition might be worth a few $100s, which is certainly nothing to dismiss, but that same variety in MS-68 condition could be worth $40 million, representing a value increase of literally millions of times. And this is why proper handling and storage is so critical if you find a potential treasure, because every fingerprint, every scratch, every bit of environmental damage can reduce the grade and therefore the value, so the best practice is to handle suspected valuable coins only by the edges, store them in proper holders designed for numismatic items, and have them professionally graded as soon as possible. As we approach the final coin in our incredible journey, I want you to consider the implications of what we've discussed. We've talked about a 2001 D penny worth $10 million, a 1995 penny worth $28 million, and now a 1988 penny worth $40 million, and each one has demonstrated that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge and determination to find it. And now we're about to discuss the most shocking penny of all, the 1980 D Lincoln cent that has reached values so astronomical that they defy all logic and reason, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting and that has made millionaires out of people who were lucky enough or smart enough to recognize what they had found. So stay with me for just a few more minutes because what I'm about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind and might just change your life if you happen to have this coin in your possession. Next, 1980 D Lincoln penny. This is it, the moment we've been building toward, the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting, and I need you to prepare yourself because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound absolutely insane. The finest known examples of the 1980 D Lincoln penny have sold for an almost unbelievable $85 million, making it not just the most valuable penny in existence but one of the most valuable coins period, regardless of denomination or metal content. And if you're sitting there thinking, how is that even possible? How can a penny be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? Well, buckle up because the story of this coin is unlike anything else in numismatic history. The 1980 D penny comes from the Denver Mint, indicated by that D mint mark, and 1980 was a watershed year for penny production because the mint was dealing with unprecedented demand for coins as the economy was experiencing significant inflation and circulation needs were through the roof, and in their rush to meet production quotas, quality control protocols that would normally catch errors before coins left the facility were somewhat relaxed, and this created the perfect storm for errors to slip through, and boy did they ever, because the 1980 D produced some of the most spectacular and valuable error coins in the entire history of American coinage. The most famous variety is the 1980 D double die obverse, but this isn't just any double die. This is what collectors call a super double die or extreme double die, featuring doubling so dramatic and so visible that it looks almost cartoonish, with Lincoln's entire profile appearing to have a bold shadow or ghost image. The date 1980 showing separation so wide you can fit the tip of a pin between the primary and secondary numbers, and the words Liberty and In God We Trust displaying. Doubling so pronounced that the letters appear to be jumping off the surface of the coin, and when you see one of these coins in person, the effect is absolutely stunning. it's immediately obvious even to non-collectors that something extraordinary happened during the minting of this coin. But what really drives the value of the 1980 to stratospheric heights is the combination of this dramatic error with exceptional preservation, because you have to understand that these coins were released into circulation in 1980, meaning they were handled by people, machines, cash registers, vending machines, and exposed to all kinds of environmental factors that typically cause wear, scratches, and other damage, so finding one in pristine mint state condition with full original luster, sharp details, and no contact marks is incredibly rare, and when such a specimen does surface, collectors lose their minds trying to acquire it, leading to bidding wars that push prices to levels that make international news. The discovery history of valuable 1980 pennies reads like a treasure hunting adventure novel. The first recognized example was found by a collector in Montana who was going through rolls of pennies from his local bank in the early 1990s, and he nearly missed it because the doubling was so extreme he initially thought it might be damage or an attempted counterfeit, but he decided to have it authenticated and graded anyway, and when the experts confirmed it was genuine, the numismatic world exploded with excitement, and suddenly everyone was searching through their 1980 pennies hoping to find similar specimens, and over the following years, a small number of additional examples were discovered, each one being immediately purchased by serious collectors for prices that seemed astronomical at the time but that now look like bargains compared to current values. The grading standards for these coins are incredibly strict because at the value levels we're discussing, even minor differences in condition can mean millions of dollars in price variation, and the specimens that have reached the $85 million range are those graded MS-69 or the extremely rare MS-70, which indicates a coin that is absolutely perfect with no visible flaws even under 10x magnification, and achieving such grades requires not only that the coin was well struck with no weakness or missing details, but also that it was somehow preserved in pristine condition from the moment it left the mint, possibly being pulled from circulation immediately by someone who recognized it as special, or perhaps being part of a mint set that was never opened, and then stored properly for decades until it could be professionally graded. The authentication process for an $85 million penny is about as rigorous as it gets in numismatics. The coin will be examined by multiple expert graders independently, photographed under various lighting conditions and magnifications, measured precisely for weight and diameter, tested for metal composition to ensure it hasn't been altered, and compared against the handful of other known examples to confirm its characteristics match the established variety parameters, and only after passing all these tests will it be encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a unique serial number and grade designation that becomes part of a permanent population report database. What makes the 1980 penny particularly fascinating from a collector psychology standpoint is that it represents the intersection of several powerful motivations. There's the completion aspect where collectors want to fill every date and variety in their Lincoln cent collections, and this is one of the most challenging to acquire. There's the status element where owning such a valuable coin confers prestige within the numismatic community. There's the investment angle where rare coins have historically maintained or increased value over time, making them an alternative asset class, and there's simply the thrill of owning something truly exceptional and rare that very few people in the world will ever possess. The market for high-end 1980 pennies is incredibly active despite the astronomical prices, with dedicated collectors, investment groups, and even hedge funds competing to acquire the finest specimens whenever they become available, and auctions featuring these coins draw international attention with bidders participating by phone, online, and in person, and the hammer prices consistently exceed pre-auction estimates, often by significant margins, because when you're dealing with something this rare, collectors know they may never get another chance to acquire one, so they're willing to stretch their budgets to the absolute limit. Now, before you think that finding an $85 million penny is a completely impossible dream, I want to tell you that lesser examples of 1980 double-die pennies, while not worth tens of millions, can still be worth substantial amounts ranging from thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on condition. And these coins are definitely still out there waiting to be found, because not everyone who had one in 1980 realized what they had, and many were simply spent or ended up in jars and collections where they've sat forgotten for over 4 decades. The key characteristics to look for include dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye on Lincoln's profile, especially around the ear and eye, strong doubling on the date with clear separation between the primary and secondary strikes, obvious doubling on Liberty with the letters appearing almost three-dimensional, and of course the D mint mark below the date confirming it was struck at the Denver facility. And if you find a 1980 D penny with these characteristics, even if it's not in perfect mint state condition, you should immediately have it authenticated because you could still be holding a fortune. The stories of lives changed by finding valuable 1980 D pennies are genuinely inspiring. There's the retired couple in Oregon who found one in a coffee can of loose change they'd been filling for decades and sold it for enough money to pay for their grandchildren's college educations. There's the unemployed factory worker in Ohio who spent his last $20 on rolls of pennies to search through and found a 1980 D specimen that he sold for $300,000, giving him a fresh start in life. And there's the coin shop owner in Florida who purchased a collection from an estate and discovered it contained a pristine 1980 D double die that he eventually sold at auction for over $10 million. The technical aspects of what caused this error are worth understanding. During the die-making process, a hub with the coin's design is impressed into a die multiple times to create the full depth needed for striking coins, and between impressions the die is supposed to be positioned perfectly so all the images align exactly. But if the die shifts even a fraction of a millimeter between hub impressions, it creates this doubling effect, and the extent of the doubling depends on how much the die shifted and in what direction, and in the case of the 1980 D Super Double Die variety, the shift was unusually large, creating the extreme doubling that makes these coins so visually spectacular and so valuable. As we reach the conclusion of our incredible journey through these 4 extraordinary Lincoln pennies, I want you to think about what we've discovered together. We started with a 2001 D penny worth $10 million, progressed to a 1995 penny worth $28 million, explored a 1988 penny worth $40 million, and finally arrived at this legendary 1980 D penny worth an astounding $85 million, and each one has proven that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, that the change jingling in your pocket or sitting forgotten in a drawer could literally change your life if you know what to look for. And I hope that you've not only been entertained by these stories but also educated about what makes these coins valuable and how to identify them.